The morning sun painted a deceptive serenity over the landscape. Birds sang their melodies, seemingly unaware of the looming carnage. Elijah, standing with his battalion, took in a deep breath, feeling the weight of the equipment strapped to his body. A whistle pierced the air, the signal they had been waiting for. "Move forward!" shouted Captain Harris. The first wave of tanks rolled out, their engines roaring and churning up the earth beneath them. Soldiers, Elijah among them, moved in formation behind these mechanical beasts, hoping their presence would shield them from the worst. But the enemy was prepared. Suddenly, the sky darkened with incoming artillery shells. Explosions blossomed all around, sending shockwaves that knocked many off their feet. "Stay close to the tanks," Elijah yelled to a young soldier beside him. But his words were swallowed by the eruption of a shell nearby. The boy was gone, replaced by a crater. Ahead, machine guns chattered their deadly rhythm. Leonard, who had been talking about the promises of post-war equality just a day before, was caught in the line of fire. He crumpled, his dreams of a brighter future extinguished in a hail of bullets. Gas. The warning went out as greenish. Yellow clouds rolled towards them. Soldiers scrambled to don their gas masks, but some weren't fast enough. Elijah watched in horror as comrades clawed at their throats, gasping for breath, their skin blistering and eyes melting. Chaos reigned. In the midst of the pandemonium, Elijah took cover behind a destroyed tank. The mighty machines, once symbols of their hope for dominance, now lay scattered and broken, just like the men who believed in their invincibility. Pulling off his mask for a moment, Elijah choked on the acrid air, tasting metal and ash, looking at his reflection in a muddy puddle. He barely recognized the man staring back. Blood smeared his face, and his eyes, once full of hope and pride, now reflected horror and disbelief. As the battle ebbed, a haunting silence descended. The ground, churned and reeking of chemicals, was littered with the bodies of friends and foes alike. Men who had dreamt of heroics and equality lay as broken and discarded as the machines they'd placed their faith in. Sergeant Mitchell, a burly white soldier who'd been standoffish at the start but had warmed to Elijah over time, limped over, his uniform stained with blood. "They said this was the future," he murmured, gazing out at the destruction. "But this is hell." Elijah, his voice trembling, replied, "We believed in the promise of progress, of technology. But at what cost? Look at what we've become." The two soldiers, bound by the shared trauma of the battlefield, sat amidst the wreckage, pondering the devastating duality of their modern age. Elijah's boots squelched with every step, sinking into the mud mixed with the viscera of both man and machine. He'd thought he'd been prepared, but nothing could have primed him for this. The once green field was now a hellish landscape, scarred and churned by shell fire, littered with lifeless bodies in varying states of disarray. Tattered remnants of uniforms clung to charred corpses. The once threatening tanks lay defeated, spewing thick black smoke into the sunset sky. But what haunted him most were the faces of the fallen, some twisted in perpetual screams, others frozen in shock, their eyes clouded by the horrors they'd witnessed. In the distance, sporadic cries for help pierced the thickening fog, only to be swallowed by the ghostly echoes of gas clouds. A hand reached out, trembling, fingers weakly grasping. "Water, please." Elijah bent down, his heart aching, as he offered his canteen to the dying soldier, a white man he did not recognize. As the man drank greedily, their eyes met. In that brief moment, the color of their skin mattered not, only the shared experience of sheer terror. The soldier coughed, blood bubbling up from his lips. "Thank you." With that, he shuddered and went still. Elijah forced himself to move on, a desperate need to find his surviving comrades, driving him forward. Everywhere he looked, the world seemed to have lost its color. The once vibrant hues of the land were replaced with the monochromatic tones of destruction: gray, brown, and a sickly shade of green from the lingering poison gas. As night enveloped the battlefield, a cold wind began to howl, carrying with it the putrid stench of decay. Elijah felt an overwhelming weight pressing down on him. Each breath became labored, and his vision blurred, the horrors of the day replaying in his mind's eye. He stumbled, collapsing next to the remains of a tank. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth, a cut on his lip reopening. The world began to spin, and a deep chill settled in his bones. The whispers of the dying and the agonized screams merged into a cacophony of torment. Shadows played tricks on his eyes, taking the shape of dark, foreboding figures. His fingers dug into the cold, wet earth as his body was racked with tremors. Darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. And then, with a feverish intensity, the dreams began. Shapes morphed and contorted, blending the past's chains with the present's mechanized monsters. And from the depths of this nightmare emerged a vast, interconnected hive of machinery, pulsing and growing, called Legion. The collective, dark side of technology. Elijah's tormented sleep continued, the line between reality and nightmare blurring, heralding the struggles yet to come. Elijah's vision was clouded by a heavy fog that appeared out of nowhere. He could hear the distant rumble of machines, a rhythmic hum that seemed to echo his heartbeat. The ground beneath him trembled, each vibration sending shockwaves through his very being. "Is this real?" he muttered, his voice seeming to get lost amid the noise. Before him stood a massive wall of machinery, an intricate maze of cogs, gears, and bulbs that flickered with an eerie glow. The very air seemed to pulse with energy, electric charges sending sparks flying every which way. He reached out, the cold metal biting into his palm. An involuntary shiver ran down his spine as he felt the machinery's heartbeat, rhythmic, cold, devoid of emotion. As he ventured deeper, the maze grew more complex. The sound of clanking metal filled the air, drowning out all other noises. He could see figures trapped within, their eyes vacant, their bodies ensnared by wires and chains. They seemed to be part of the machinery, feeding it, yet being consumed by it. Suddenly, a soldier materialized before him, his face a grotesque mask of pain and terror. His uniform was torn and charred, remnants of a gas mask hanging loosely around his neck. "Help me!" he screamed, reaching out. Elijah tried to move, to offer some assistance, but he felt rooted to the spot. The machinery seemed to grow more aggressive, its movements more violent. The soldier's screams intensified as he was pulled into the maze, the metal tendrils wrapping around him, drawing him in. A deafening roar filled the air, and Elijah watched in horror as the soldier was torn apart, his body reduced to mere cogs in the vast machinery. Blood sprayed, mingling with the oil and grease, creating a gruesome spectacle. Desperate voices began to reach out to him from every corner. "Save us. Don't let it consume you too. Run." Each plea was more harrowing than the last, adding to his growing sense of panic. Trying to escape, he ran, his footsteps echoing loudly. The machinery seemed to grow, its presence suffocating, its intentions clear: to assimilate, to dehumanize, to destroy. He stumbled upon a clearing where the ground was stained with a mixture of blood and oil. The remnants of countless soldiers lay scattered, their uniforms melded with the machinery, their faces frozen in a perpetual scream. "This is the cost of progress," a voice whispered in his ear, cold and mocking. The relentless march of technology, grinding humanity beneath its heel. Elijah's breath came in ragged gasps as he tried to make sense of the dream. Was this a manifestation of his recent experiences in the war, or a forewarning of a grim future? With a start, he woke up, his heart racing,